conviction.
yeah,
Oh, right,
so now you
can't
can't
get
vote?
public. You can't get vote.
Can't
You
vote,
can't get
right.
public benefits. You can't get housing, and so. And many times your kids are taken away, so your
Right.
life is completely destroyed.
Right, right.
And then what's your motivation to get
motivation
better
for-
from your
right,
addiction?
yeah, your
Now
life
you're
has been
depressed
ruined,
and
right, yeah.
Exactly.
Because your whole life has been destroyed.
So it's so complex,
Right,
and yet it's so simple if you
it's
apply
so
what you
simple.
said.
If you
Right.
just
apply
apply
science.
logic and science.
Science.
Because if you apply logic and science to this whole problem, it's clear that what we're doing is creating the problem. I mean, you can cite studies like this. It's not like even Nixon's own people in their study. Maybe you could talk about this a little bit, Dale. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the study. I just know that there was a very exhaustive study that was done under Nixon.
Well, this is the 30th anniversary,
30th anniversary,
of the
30 years
Presidential
ago.
Commission on Marijuana and Drug
Right.
Abuse, which basically went in to look at the marijuana problem, and it had a very conservative tilt to it, actually,
well,
chaired
Nixon,
by Governor Schaefer, a law and order Republican from Pennsylvania, and came out recommending that laws against criminal possession and against possession and use of marijuana in private be repealed.
That was the actual recommendation.
Yes, although they
This is amazing.
they did believe that distribution should remain illegal.
Right.
It was sort of a partial prohibition kind of solution,
Right.
and Nixon made it very clear from the get-go that he wasn't going to listen to the report. But
Well,
that
he
isn't the
buried that
first
report.
report that has come up with a recommendation like that. We have a whole series of reports that go all the way back to the 19th century. 1894, the British Indian Hemp Drugs Commission was looking at the same issue in British India, where
Right.
cannabis was in fact legal at the time. And some prohibitionists had suggested maybe this wasn't the right thing. They conducted what may well be the most exhaustive study of it that's ever been conducted. They interviewed, I think, 11,000 people as part of this, produced a big multi-volume study that you can find in the Stanford Library, and basically came to the conclusion that this drug was not harmful in the vast majority of cases. There may be a few people who were using it too much all the time, and those people seem to have problems. But basically, it made more sense to tax the stuff and leave it there than to try to suppress it. And there have been other studies since then. There was one by the U.S. Army in the Canal Zone in the 1920s, where our soldiers were using it in the Canal Zone. The Army looked into it, decided, it's not really
not
a
a big deal.
problem.
Not
But
as bad as
they
alcohol,
prohibited
clearly.
it anyhow.
Right.
There was a study by the mayor of New York and the New York Academy of Sciences, the LaGuardia Commission. There have been several foreign studies. There was a Canadian Ledane Commission report. We had a report here, the British study.
Well, the reality is
and-
you don't hear any doctors on any of these talk shows or in any of these federal programs saying that marijuana is bad for you. And I think the reality is we can bring it up to date to 2002. I mean, the history is wonderful and it's so true, but bringing it back to science. Okay, the government wanted cigarettes. They wanted to prove they were safe, it couldn't. They wanted alcohol. They wanted to prove it was safe, they couldn't. They wanted to get rid of alcohol. They even banned it, and yet still they could not prove that it was dangerous. Now, another confusion that I think really states why the problem is so absurd is no science was applied to the scheduling of marijuana. So I, as a doctor, only know science. And my thing is,
Makes
if
it
you come to
difficult.
me,
Very
you
difficult.
want a dangerous drug,
Right.
okay? So before I go to give you a dangerous drug, I have to be really serious, okay? And you have to be really sick, and I have to really
That's
worry.
right.
But then we've got this marijuana thing, and it's like, okay, it's safer than aspirin. So why don't you try it?
You know, that's the amazing thing, is that there have been 0 fatalities. I hear now in the, on the street that there now is supposedly 1 fatality, and that was some brother tried to eat his stash because the police were busting him and he choked. So there's supposedly out there 1 fatality or 0. And cigarettes, 400,000 a year.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's 8 times Vietnam
Well,
every
yeah.
year.
That's the point. There is no point from a doctor's point of view.
It's
This is
insane.
ludicrous.
It's insane.
It
It's
is ludicrous.
absolutely insane.
As Bill Maher was saying in our conference about that,
Yeah.
how is it that the one drug that doesn't cause
That
any
doesn't cause-
deaths is the one that's
is the one that's illegal. All the other drugs are legal. The one drug that it actually it has
It
benefits.
cures.
It
Yeah, it
cures. It has
benefits.
benefits.
Yes.
Well, no, that's how insidious it is. That is precisely the reason that it's illegal. I mean, you say there's a whole bunch of lies are like you layer lies on top of lies like this, and you get spaghetti, and that's why it gets so hard. You need like the laser light of truth to cut through all these lies.
Except, of course, the laser light of truth needs money. That's the
Well,
reality, okay?
Well,
because
but
think of the
truth
alcohol.
is free. Truth is
Right,
free
but
in a
think
way.
of the
I mean, this
alcohol
is free right
industry.
here. We're telling truth, and this is truth. Free truth. Anything that's good is free. Free
That's
truth.
true. But the alcohol
instead of
industry will
FYI
lose
for your
money.
information, FYM, free your mind.
Right.
And when the truth will set you free. So the part of that truth is that there was a cabal to make marijuana illegal. There was a whole history of suppression and da 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 da. It was the
I've actually done a very extensive investigation on this very subject. It's
Right.
a very
Perched
interesting
and
thing, and
that whole thing.
well, it goes back before that. Here in California, in fact, California pioneered the war on pot.
Right.
You know, many
True.
people think about the Reefer Madness campaign, which led to the federal law against marijuana in 1937. But before that, in 1913, the California State Board of Pharmacy made cannabis indica illegal
Really?
in California.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because California was at that time starting the first state war on drugs, and they had already started out against opium smoking and morphine and cocaine, and they just threw in cannabis indica because one of the members of the board, a guy named Henry Finger, this pharmacist, had noticed that there were these Hindu, actually East Indian immigrants to California, and they were using
This
cannabis, and
mysterious.
the
And
worry
don't forget
was
the
that
Mexicans. Don't forget the Mexicans, too. It was before them?
well, the Mexicans they hadn't quite heard about yet. This
okay.
was just as the Mexicans were coming into Southern
first,
California.
those,
What happened was,
Eastern Indians.
on the excuse of the cannabis using Hindus, the State Board of Pharmacy just sponsored this amendment to the code of the poison laws of California, making
Interesting.
cannabis illegal. Now, there were almost no cannabis users in California at that
Right,
time.
right.
Now we have 5 million, probably, users in California. So
Right,
you can
right.
see how effective this law has been at discouraging use. The other interesting thing about it is, right after they passed the law, it suddenly came to their attention that the Mexicans were growing it in Los Angeles.
Right,
And
right.
in 1914, the State Board of Pharmacy launched the first known marijuana bust in the entire United States.
Wow. See, we're leaders, California, leading the nation again.
That's
racist
right.
drug
And racist drug policies leading the nation.
Well, I'd like to say maybe we've had more experience with these laws than any other state,
Right,
and
so
maybe
we're the
we have
state
learned
with
now,
the
finally,
used to be
that
the
they
state.
Well,
don't
right, that's
work.
why
Change.
Mississippi
Right.
had to
That's
change
an
over.
optimistic
Right, exactly. It was
Right.
Mississippi
Yeah, it's the
that had
worst, the worst. That has to
it's
become
a
the
big
best.
metaphor, actually. It's the
Yeah.
good and evil, facing off, and it's, so it is our
Well, I
our
think-
duty to change
I
the
Well,
think-
it's
laws.
also interesting there that the federal government is now really targeting, so far has been targeting California
California
as
with
the
camp
focus
and-
for their new kind of their new raids and their
Right.
new attacks on the distribution
Well,
of
the
Right.
thing
marijuana.
that
at
blows
least in
me
the clubs.
away
Right.
is, where is CPS? Where is NBC? Where are people? Because what it took to break the black children and the black old people being, ruined
Right,
by
right.
the whites was it took footage of the misery. Okay, and what we're basically seeing is I
Right.
see patients who have MS, who can't walk. I see patients in wheelchairs, and I know they're being harassed. I know
Right,
some of them
right.
are going to jail. I know people with hepatitis C who are being persecuted. And I guess what we need to do is somehow we need to get it up to the American consciousness, because people can
Right,
relate to me.
right.
They can understand that I'm a mommy and that I'm trying to raise my kids and I'm trying to survive cancer. But I think a whole lot of people would come over to our side that don't care about pot
Right.
smoking, but they care about people.
care about
They
people.
want
It's a
people
compassion
who are
issue. It's a
sick,
compassion
right?
issue.
Not to be
Right.
forced to be subject to all these ridiculous.
Right. Well, I think it's a
penalties.
good indicator of just how deep the Puritan ethic in this country runs. It's like, it's going to help sick people, but somebody might have fun too. Better. Now, if you're going to have fun, forget about it.
Well,
You know,
but
it's
2
that
Vicodin every
psychotic
4
almost.
hours makes you way high. This
Yeah,
is the
it's
whole
true.
argument. Morphine makes
discrimination.
you
It's
way
really
high.
discrimination.
It's totally, well, I know why. I mean, it's totally about this thing that alcohol has a big lobby, and alcohol is their drug, and alcohol
It's
makes
their
you
drug. It's
right,
the
and
white
it
man's
makes
drug.
you belligerent,
It's the white-
aggressive,
yeah,
and
it's-
violent.
right,
And belligerent, aggressive, and violent fills the prisons and helps run the country. And not
Right.
only that, the pharmaceuticals have
It animates the police
multi-billion
state. It
dollars
animates the police
invested in trying to get get us to eat pills. They've spent for 30 years teaching us first how to take them, then how to talk to your doctor, and ultimately how to tell your doctor, I'm sick and I want
need
this
that
pill.
pill. Right,
Exactly.
right,
And
exactly.
I think we should get those off TV. That is
Right.
just as
That's
damaging
an
to our children
that's an
as
abomination.
cigarette ads and alcohol ads. Because
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're telling our children that you can self-diagnose, which you cannot, that everybody is sick, which they are not,
Right.
and that these pills
These
are
pills
magic
are magic,
answers,
yeah,
and they are
yeah,
not.
Exactly.
And
I always get a kick when they run the, side effects may include A friend of mine makes the point. He said those aren't side effects; those are the effects. The pill doesn't know which are those are the effects.
I was recently talking to a friend of mine who was watching a family movie with her kids the other day, and one of these government ads blaming kids for the war on, blaming kids for terrorism. One of these drugs are causing terrorism ads came on, and that came on, and then followed up by all of these drug ads. And she was trying to explain to her kids, where's the sense here? Which drugs are they saying are okay?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Which drugs can you use? Which drugs cause terrorism?
Know which are the good drugs and the bad drugs.
Which drugs cure
Which
terrorism?
ones cure terrorism? Which
Which
ones
drugs
are
make the
feeding
government-
capitalism?
Yeah,
Which
right,
ones
right.
are right?
well, that's one of the biggest things.
It's confusing. You need a score sheet.
Well, I could have confused this whole system more if I had been motivated by drug companies, because the reality is, if I write a prescription for Marinol, you are somewhat more protected in a legal sense than
right.
if I just say, you want to smoke some marijuana? That's
Right.
okay
Oh,
with me.
yeah,
I think that's reasonable in
yeah.
your condition with your back
Right,
and blah, blah,
right,
blah.
right.
Well, the reason why I didn't do that was because Marinol is, upwards of $7 a pill for the low doses and almost $20 a pill for the high doses.
Right.
And that's
You don't need it.
ridiculous.
You don't need it. It's crazy.
Well, and it doesn't work.
need it.
Besides the
doesn't
fact
work,
it doesn't
yeah.
work. But I mean, there's two aspects of my job. One is, do you qualify under the California statute? And the second is, do I have enough paperwork to
Right.
stand up in court and defend you
Right.
and have a fairly reliable sense that I'll be able to get you
Right,
out of trouble?
Right, exactly. So it's the aspect of ganja that we're talking about is only part of the aspect. Of course, there's a whole nother aspect, and that is the industrial use of this. What I would say is
Remarkable plant.
I drove. Actually, can we show that? Can we run that footage? Are we ready up there, Matthew, to run that? I'd just like to take a segue to the normal conference and show a little bit, a look and feel of the normal conference. So I'm going to run two short little segments. Matthew, can you cue that?